A windmill is a machine that uses the power of the wind to produce electricity. Just as we have solar panels that use the power of the sun to produce electricity, windmills, on the other hand, use the power of the wind to produce electricity. This story takes us to the nation of Malawi. In 2002, in a small village in Malawi called Masitala, there was a young man called William Kamkwamba. Now, William Kamkwamba grew up in a poor family. There was barely enough food for them, let alone school fees to cater for his education and that of his siblings. The main economic source for the family was farming. But there was a challenge around that time. There was such a pronounced famine in the land, in that it had taken months without rain ever falling down. And you do know that with farming, rain or water is such an important part of the process if you were to get a meaningful harvest. This famine, it made the situation of William Kamkwamba's family even a lot worse, because now even that which they expected to receive from the farming was being threatened by this prolonged drought. Around that time, William Kamkwamba unfortunately dropped out of school because his father was unable to continue paying money for him at his school. And it was in that state that this young man, that was 14 years of age at that point, started to think about a solution to the prolonged drought. In spite of his situation, William Kamkwamba had a deep love for science and innovation. And so even at that point when he drops out of school, he was able to continue self-learning by accessing certain books from the village library. And so on one of those days, he lands on a book in the library that was called Using Energy. Now, this book was highlighting the innovation of windmills, and William Kamkwamba was fascinated with this windmill technology. For one thing, he knew that there were strong winds in the village from which he came. And therefore, from the illustration that he had gotten from this book, he started to think about creating a windmill where he would harness the power of the wind to create electricity that would provide power to pump water from the earth so as to irrigate the people's farms. Armed with determination, this young man, William Kamkwamba, at 14 years, he started to collect all scrap material that he could to make the idea of his windmill a reality. Old bicycle parts, plastic pipes, tree branches, all manner of scrap material that he would get, and then he started building. And after several attempts at this, in the year 2002, William Kamkwamba was able to create his first windmill that produced 12 volts of power. Now, this was able to light up about 4 bulbs and power up radios. Now, that is when the people of the village started to pay attention. And thereafter, still from using scrap material, he was able to create an even bigger windmill that enabled the process of irrigation in the village from which he came. Currently, William Kamkwamba is involved in a massive windmill project still in his home country of Malawi. But at this point, he is no longer using scrap material because after the success of his first windmills, he was able to garner the financial support that he needed. He was able to finish school. And so currently he's working on a massive windmill project in his nation of Malawi. But he's also an author of a book, The Boy That Harnessed the Wind. And this book has also been made into a movie with the same title, The Boy That Harnessed the Wind. Stories like these of William Kamkwamba, a young man with the world against him right from the start, a young man that barely had a chance to make it. And yet, in spite of all of these things, he goes against the odds and he uses the only thing that the world cannot take away from him, which is his genius, to create something that changes not just his life, but the life of society as he knows it. When we hear stories like this, we are inspired to stop complaining and instead begin to look at how we can become a solution. That is it for this episode. Thank you very much for listening in.